First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for downloading this video and taking this massive action, this one step, which seems small. You're like, hey, look, I'm just watching a video. Don't get too excited. But you're really doing more than that. What you're doing by watching a video like this is you're saying, hey, look, I'm interested in something. I think there's an opportunity in my life and I'm taking some sort of action. I'm at least exploring or moving in the direction of a solution. And so I just want to first of all acknowledge that and thank you for that. Second, I want to introduce myself. My name is Osorio. I'm the founder and a reinvention coach for the School of Reinvention. Our mission here is to help disengaged 9-to-5ers build that passion project or that side hustle that fulfills them so that they don't have to quit their job. You know, one of the things that I've noticed in this great resignation era that we live in is that not everyone can actually resign. And let's face it, if everyone was, we wouldn't have the unemployment levels we have today. Unemployment would be in the 20 or 30% range, but it's not. Because most people are not quitting, even if that's what we hear a lot about. And I get it. Quitting is not something that I take lightly. I've done it a couple of times in my life, and it was something that I really had to prepare for, something that I really had to think about intentionally. I've also been fired. I've also been laid off. These things do happen along the journey. But quitting is not something that I take lightly. It's not something that I think anybody should take lightly. And there are times in our lives and in our careers where we just cannot quit. For instance, I was talking to a few clients of mine who were telling me about some of their challenges. And one of the things they shared was that they have visa issues. They're here in the United States, that is, on an international visa. And when you're on an international visa, you have to be sponsored by a company. That's someone right there who really cannot quit, like absolutely cannot quit unless they were ready to go back to their home countries. And so there are so many other situations that might require you to stay where you are. There might be income reasons, health insurance reasons. Maybe you're taking care of family. Perhaps you're taking care of kids or you're taking care of parents. We live in a time where parents are living longer than they used to. And of course, we may have our kids and we may be trapped in there, or not trapped, that's perhaps the wrong word to use. But I think that we might be in that middle spot where we're in this moment where we're both taking care of children and we're taking care of parents. Whatever the case might be, there are plenty of great reasons why you may not be able to quit right now. And so the question then is, if you're not satisfied by what you're doing at work, if you're not fulfilled, if you're not feeling engaged, then what do? I mean, one option is we can sit back and wait to see what our employer does. Maybe our employer will kick off some cool new programs or do something to like get the culture of this company exciting again or spice things back up. Now, that could very well be the case. However, usually those things take time. They don't happen right away. And since they don't happen right away, we might be waiting for a little while before we actually get to that point. So what else can we do? Well, we can take action. We can start doing things that bring our best self out, that reactivate our best self. Because the truth is, your best self is already in you somewhere. And the mission is to get that out again. And perhaps it's been, kind of tamed, or maybe it's been leveled down a bit or kind of shut off, or maybe it's run out of fuel. Whatever has happened, if we're not seeing your best self right now, that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means that we need to give it some fuel. We need to give it some energy. We need to give it a reason to come out. And that's what I do. I help people launch passion projects and side hustles because what I have found is that all great reinventions usually start with some sort of project, some sort of passion project or side hustle that people engage in order to start building something that could become a reinvention possibility. In my case, I've launched many, and I'm going to share a story with you in a little while about how I launched my pivot from selling commercial refrigeration. So I'm talking like the beer coolers that go inside of restaurants and convenience stores and things like that, to teaching math in a high school classroom and in a middle school, all-girls school classroom. Going from that one extreme to another started with a project, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But that is what I find, is that the project or the side hustle is where all of these things begin. And that's where I want to take you. I want to talk to you a little bit about that, and also the mindset that we have to embark on such a journey, to embark on a path where we start testing things out. This is an opportunity for us to address some of those challenges that we're going through. This is an opportunity for us to take matters into our own hands and start to tap into and create new fulfillment in our lives. For me, I was, I'm going to tell the story a little bit in more detail later, but math was something that existed on the side for me during some very tough times. And that idea of being able to add value to people who needed help with math really just that work that I did helped me tap into and create fulfillment in my life, even when I wasn't totally feeling fulfilled in my day job. And so what that did was it activated my best self, and it brought, and then I was able to bring that version to the job. So it didn't solve all of the problems at the job, but you know what? When you come to the job with in a better state, feeling like your best self, you approach the challenges differently. You approach the situation differently. You come in with a different mindset and a different frame of mind to tackle those challenges and problems. And you may not even be able to overcome all of them, and that's okay. But all of a sudden, you know what? Things are a little bit more tolerable. They're doable. They're workable. They're manageable. And that might get you just far enough so that you can get to a point where you might have created new reinvention possibilities for yourself, or maybe an opportunity for you to pivot into another thing, whatever that thing might be. In my case, at one point in my career, it was pivoting from sales to teaching math. So today, there's a few things I want to cover. I'm just going to get my notes up here so that I can make sure that I don't miss anything that I want to share with all of you. Let's see here. So one of the things that we're going to start with here in this session is that often we start thinking about reinventions when something happens in our lives. For instance, I'll give you a couple examples. In my case, I thought about reinvention when I found myself not so fulfilled by my day job. This was my first reinvention, and this was a long time ago, 15 years ago. And when that happened, I started to think about other things I could do, applying for other jobs, looking into maybe launching a startup with a buddy of mine, and all these kinds of things. Later on in life, there were other moments that called for reinvention. There was a job that I was in where the dynamic between me and my coworkers was really poor. There was also a culture problem in that place. And because of some of those things, I just felt like I was in a really bad spot, in a really bad place, and I just wanted to get the heck out of there. There was a time once where I was being bullied by an executive in my organization. And that right there just made me so angry. I was so pissed. I was embarrassed, pissed, because not only did he bullied me in public in front of a lot of other people, a lot of other important people, including my own manager, who even kind of giggled a little bit at the jokes and all of that, probably because he figured, well, that's my boss. I better laugh at his jokes. Being in that spot, not fun. I wanted to get the hell out of there. I was so pissed at that situation, and I wanted to leave. And so these are those moments where we start thinking about maybe it's time for a whole new career. Maybe it's time to get the hell out of here and go find something else, whatever that might be. And because we come to it with that kind of a mindset where we're running away from something, we actually run the risk that we might run into something worse. We don't run with intention. We just run away from something. And when we run away from something, we tend to look backwards just to make sure we're actually getting away. And the problem with running while looking backwards is that you don't look at what you're running towards. And when you don't do that, you might end up in a situation that is worse than the one that you were coming from. Or it's one that just won't bring you fulfillment. It may not even be that bad. It's just that you're not happy, you're not fulfilled, you're not doing what you really want to be doing. And that's okay. Again, those things happen. The thing is, that's not where reinvention starts. Reinvention starts at a different place. Reinvention starts before that moment in your life, before someone's pissed you off, bullied you, or before the job just gets dull and boring. Look, sometimes it's a dream job that you want to actually get away from. It sounds crazy, but there are times where a dream job doesn't feel so dreamy anymore. And we feel like this is not exactly like what I'm into anymore. And that's okay. We grow, we develop, we change, we evolve. All of these things happen. And along the way, our values, our passions, our purpose might shift. And when they do, we might find that this job no longer fulfills us. And that's okay. It's a weird feeling because you know that this was a job you would have and you already did kill for, and that's why you were in it. But now it's not time for that anymore. It doesn't feel right anymore. And that's okay. The thing is, that too is not the moment to start thinking about and preparing for a reinvention. Reinventions are something that we need to begin working on before that moment. And so we want to make sure that we're not running away from something, but instead we're running towards something. That's what we really want to make sure. And that's what this reinvention work and this session on the mindset to reinvention, and I'll even share what it is that we can do before these moments happen so that we can be prepared to run towards something when the time is right. And when you feel like that is the moment to actually go ahead and do something. We want to create reinvention possibilities and have them lined up before those moments. And hey, from time to time, one of the things that I found in my own career is that you might not even need that moment to spark a reinvention. There are times where I have moved on to something else from something great, something that honestly I was still enjoying. For instance, in my case, I left a teaching role at a prestigious university. Why did I leave that teaching role? Well, there was actually nothing wrong with the role. In fact, I was just coming off my best year ever, and I could not wait to actually get the next year started until I realized that this job is going in a different direction than where I actually want to go. So even though I love it, I love the people I work with, I love the work I'm doing, I love the students that I'm serving, this is not moving in the direction that I want to ultimately move into. And I had to have a very difficult conversation with my manager to say, is there another way I can be a part of this team, or maybe it's time to leave? Fortunately, I was able to find another way to stay part of the team, but to scale back my involvement so that I can create the time and space to run in the direction that I wanted to run into. So reinvention doesn't always start with something bad, something negative. Sometimes it's a decision that, hey, I got to leave this thing I love so that I can move towards this other thing that I'm starting to really fall in love with. Whatever the reason that brings you to the doorstep of reinvention, I want to help you start starting to have the methods and the mindset to create the possibilities for yourself so that you can have choices when the time comes to make a move, whenever that time might be. And you, of course, will decide that. So in this video, we're going to talk about this reinvention, the idea of a reinvention mindset. What is it that people who reinvent themselves do so well? And a lot of it has to do with the way they think about opportunities, the way they think about challenges, the way they think about maybe their shift in values, passions, and purpose. And so I want to share a story that I think, this is a story I was talking about earlier, the story that has helped me, that I think will help you understand or see kind of like a lot of these lessons. And then we're going to break down the lessons and talk a little bit about what you can extract from this story that you can put into practice right away. So this is the story of me shifting from a national accounts salesperson where I was selling commercial refrigeration to restaurants, to bars, to pubs, and convenience stores. Beer coolers that stored beer and actually, by the way, made the beer colder than its freezing point. It was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I got to go to places like Miami for the Super Bowl and all of these kinds of things. I got to hang out at all the parties around the Super Bowl. A fun job for a single guy who's 25. However, I hit a point in this role where I wasn't feeling fully fulfilled. And I started to get a hint eventually of what might be the thing that I could fall in love with even more than this. So for me, the reinvention project that I started, the idea, the seed that I planted, even before this moment came, happened for a reason that had nothing to do with any shift in values, passion, and purpose. It actually comes before that. And so what I used to do while I was working that job as a national account salesperson was I parked cars in the evenings on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. I did that for about 2 years. And I did this so that I could pay off my student loans faster. I wanted to get out of that debt. And so I figured if I can work this part-time job in the evenings and then combine it with my day income, then I could hopefully start really creating a dent in my debt situation. So after 2 years of working that part-time job, honestly, like I was feeling really burnt out. The problem with that job was that on Thursdays, I would work in the office until about 5 o'clock, and then I would have to be at the restaurant at 6 p.m. So that I could work there from 6 p.m. until about midnight or 1 in the morning. So then that was Thursday. So Thursday, I'm up at whatever time, usually like around 5 or 6 to go to the gym, then go to the office and be there by 8-ish, hang out at the office until working until 5, then get changed in a bathroom very quickly, put on my valet uniform, drive over to the restaurant, which is about 30 minutes away, and then hopefully scarf something down as dinner real quick so that I can begin parking cars at 6 p.m. I would work all the way until about 12 or 1 in the morning, drive home for about 30 minutes, fall asleep maybe because you got to really come down from all that running and energy, probably like around 2:30 in the morning, wake up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning to start all over again on Friday. I mean, this is starting to get exhausting just even saying it and rethinking it and reliving it. And then I'd have to work Friday night as well. Saturday, of course, I had some time off during the day so I could actually relax and do something fun for myself or just sleep. And then Saturday night, I was back at the restaurant working until about 1 or 2 in the morning. Saturday nights usually ran a little bit longer. 2 years of this took a toll on my body, took a toll on me. And while I did enjoy many parts of it because I worked with somebody who's really awesome and became a really dear friend of mine, I also worked at a really fun restaurant with really great owners, nice people. Customers were fun. It was a great workout. You're running around a lot, driving really cool cars. But it did take a toll on my body, and I decided that I needed to start creating a new possibility for how I could make extra income on the side without having to put in so many hours. And so what I did was I thought about, well, what could I do? What could I offer that might be of any value? And this is literally the question that I asked myself at the time. What could I bring of value to any table? And I immediately thought of math. So math was a subject that was always near and dear to me. I didn't pursue a math degree or become an engineer or developer or anything like that. I got a business degree, finance, international business, but I loved teaching math, and I spent a lot of time tutoring math when I was in high school and at university. And so I thought, if I could tutor math, and I think this is still a challenging subject in this country, so hopefully that means there's a lot of demand for people who need help with math or from those folks. I thought this could be a great way to make extra money, and at an hourly rate that would match or be better than what I was making parking cars. I don't remember the exact number right now off the top of my head what I was making parking cars, but it was probably like when you averaged it out by hour, I was in the $20 range or something like that. And I thought I could do better than that tutoring math. I could probably charge somewhere between 25 and 35. And so I decided that this was something that I needed to test out. I didn't quit my job, my part-time job, parking cars, until I wanted to run this experiment first. And so I tested it out. Now, how did I test it out? Now, this is a really important part of testing ideas out. When you test ideas, you want to keep the test as simple as possible. So part of the mindset that I'm talking about today is keeping things simple. And so I wanted to see, could I really do this, and would I enjoy it? Because I didn't know if I would enjoy it or not anymore. I enjoyed it once upon a time when I was younger. But what if I didn't enjoy it now? So what I had to do was I had to find a way to test this out in a really small commitment kind of way, in a way where I wouldn't be committing to a lot of different clients or a lot of different people or a long period of time, but just, something small. So I went to Craigslist. Yeah, Craigslist. And I put up an ad on Craigslist. I put up, math tutoring available, blah, blah, blah. I can't even remember what the copy said, but I'm sure I put something pretty basic and simple around what I would offer. And I got the first email, and it was from a guy named Patricio, and he was a student at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, and that's where I was living at the time. So Patricio reaches out and says, "Hey, I need help with my game theory course at Washington University." And I was like, "Awesome!" And he was like, "And I can pay your fee. It's all good. When can we start?" I was, I'm like, "Hey, wow, this really worked." So of course I said yes right away. Here was a little bit of a problem. I had never taken a course in game theory. So I had to figure out, how am I going to help this kid in game theory if I've never even taken game theory myself? I took a lot of math classes, or interesting math classes, not as many as an engineer or as many as a developer, but I took enough that I felt confident that I could figure this out, but I still had to figure it out. So I went to Amazon. First I asked him what textbook he's using. I asked him for a copy of the syllabus. I went to Amazon. I found the used version of an older edition of that same book. It's math. It hasn't changed in a very long time, so most of the math books are all the same. And then what I did was I just started studying up on the topic and started learning all of the ideas from the topic, from game theory, before he would get to it. So I would stay on his syllabus, and since I knew the schedule and when they would cover each session, I would just read ahead a little bit. So anyway, I did this for a while. I was able to help him out at the end of the day, but this took a lot of time. This took a lot of effort, and I thought, maybe this isn't the right thing for me right now. Maybe I should stick to parking cars, because for 1 hour of tutoring in game theory, I needed 3 hours of prep, and those economics just did not add up. So in the end, I was dividing, I think, what was $35 an hour by 4 hours that I was working in order to get ready for that one session. All right, so this thing didn't work out, but it was still fun. I learned a little bit about myself. I saw that, hey, I can do this. And go figure, I did it for a course that I'd never taken in my life. Imagine if I wrote better copy on the next ad and simply made sure that I made it clear that I only cover certain topics, up to a certain level, whatever that might be. That way I can make sure that I tutor on my terms. But I decided to finish up that engagement with Patricio, keep parking cars. And then that summer of 2007, I think it was, I finally decided, okay, I'm going to leave parking cars because I hit a major milestone in my debt conquest. I didn't pay it off. I wish I could say I paid it all off. But I hit a major milestone that I had set for myself. And I thought this would be a good moment to take a step back and maybe reevaluate what else I could do. That one experiment really helped out because I started thinking back to that experiment that I'd done many months earlier. And I thought, what if I could find something along these lines, but focused on the topics that I can cover best. And turns out there was an ad for a job, once again, on Craigslist, for a job that was with a local learning center that taught math after school. And you worked with students one-on-one or in small groups or whatever it might be. And they needed a math teacher. And so I thought, let me apply to this job. So I applied to that job, went to the interview, and was able to get through all of that. And then finally, once I did that, I came out of that and I just felt like this is the right place for me. Hopefully they would feel the same. And luckily they did. They got back to me and they said, hey, we love your energy. We'd love to bring you in. We know, you're not a traditional math teacher. This is not what you do by day, but we think your energy could be really valuable. And as long as you can keep up with the topics, then, we won't have a problem. So we'll try you out. I was super excited. This was awesome. I started creating a schedule for myself with them. It was always after school. They knew I worked at a company until 5, so I wouldn't be home until 5:30 or 6. And they always scheduled me sometime between 6 and 9, sometimes for the full 3 hours. And I would get over there and start working. Any day I could escape the office earlier, I would offer myself up to go and teach a few more hours. I didn't make as much as I made with Patricio, but this was steady. It was at a level that I could handle without any prep, and I could just come in and do the extra work. I fell in love with this job. I fell in love with helping kids break through their limiting beliefs, break through confidence barriers in order to perform in a subject that they actually believed they were not wired to do. I don't know if you're someone who enjoys math or hates math, and usually it's either one or the other. Very few people who sit in the middle, especially from my experience teaching. But often there are many people, unfortunately, in the United States at least, that feel that math is not something they're wired to do. By the way, that's BS. Everyone is wired to do math because you're doing math all day. It's just that you're not doing it with letters and numbers. You're doing it with friends and family. You're doing it with jobs. You're doing it with business. You're doing it with your career, with so many other things. Complicated dynamics and equations that are way harder than anything inside of any math textbook. And so this is what I taught my students, and I just absolutely fell in love with this work. I started to see a side of myself I didn't even know existed. I saw skills in myself and started developing them again that I didn't know existed. Turns out there was a lot I remembered from how one of my favorite math teachers taught me. And he was more of a coach in math than he was a teacher. I don't think he knew it at the time, but he definitely pulled math out of us more than he shoved it inside of us. And that made a big difference. And I brought a lot of that to the work I did. Over that period of time, I just started to really fall in love with this. I fell in love with the students I was working with. I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with everything about what I was doing in those 3 hours a day. And all of a sudden, I was faced with like a dilemma. I love these 3 hours more than I love the 8-ish or whatever hours I was working in my day job. These, 12 to 18 or whatever hours, or 12 to 15 hours a week that I'm working part-time, I love more than the 50-ish hours that I'm working by day. And I didn't know what to do with that. And I had to start figuring that out. In the middle of 2008, I finally decided that I was going to leave my day job. And I put together a financial plan, one where I could just barely survive for 12 months, even if I didn't make another penny. And I knew I would make something because I would probably tutor. But I figured, let me plan as if I couldn't make another penny and make sure that I could at least pay rent, the minimums on all of my remaining loans, and and food, of course, and all utilities. And so I put that plan together and I was able to figure that out. I left the company I was working for, and I started to work on math. Along the way, I decided to go back to school. I wanted to go back because I realized while I had some beginner's luck, if you will, with the students I worked with at the Learning Center while I was still working my day job, I didn't want to presume that that meant that I was going to be outstanding at something that I haven't really practiced as much as a full-time math teacher or someone at that level. And so I started thinking about what could I do to up my skills. And so I started looking into graduate programs. And at first I thought it would probably be something related to math or education. Turns out it wasn't. It was actually in psychology, because one of the things I learned by working with these students was that it's not so much a matter of the math. It's more a matter of confidence and limiting beliefs. It's their psychology. It's not the strategy that gets in their way. And so why would I sit there and invest money or time and effort in learning more about the strategy if I knew that well enough already to get through? Why don't I just focus on the psychology, the part that I believe makes the difference, the part that in that engagement will really set them free and help them be their best self in math? And so that's what I did. I enrolled in a master's in psychology, focused on executive coaching, and I got to work on that. While I was doing that, I started my own tutoring company. I continued working a few hours some hours per week at the Learning Center. So I got more and more practice working with math students at different levels. I was able to earn more income doing that to, provide for myself and not have to dip into my savings and my backup money for that 12 months I had created. And then I just got really into that work, applying what I was learning in my master's to my tutoring sessions with my students. Eventually, I even stopped calling myself a math tutor, and I started calling myself a math coach, because that was really what I was doing. I was a math coach, not a math tutor anymore. I finished my graduate program and I continued tutoring. And when I finished that program, I think it was about a year and a half later, continuously tutoring as much as I could, even starting to do small group tutoring privately on my own, like test prep for SATs and ACT. I started to look for an opportunity, a bigger one. I wanted to get into the classroom. And so it was in, what year was it? 2012 that I was finally able to get into the math classroom. I met a superintendent who loved my energy. I told him some of the stories of students that I'd worked with and what I was able to do for them. And he said, I want to find a way to bring you in. And I know you don't have a certificate in teaching. You don't have the degrees or anything like that. And we're a public school, so legally I can't bring you in as a full-time teacher, but I want to bring you in as a consultant. And I want you to work with another teacher to really make an impact on our math program, because our math program is struggling. I couldn't believe this. I'm like, wow, this is my first shot at teaching high school math. 2 years later, he had to let me go because the funding that he was using to pay me was cut from the state cut that budget and that funding. And so he didn't have that anymore and he couldn't keep me on. But I found something else and I was able to start teaching math at an all-girl private school. Turns out private schools don't need teachers to have any degrees in teaching or certificates in teaching or anything like that for that state. They can hire anybody they want to teach. And so I was able to then take my work and my experience and transition into working with middle school students at an all-girl private school. And so I got to do that for 2 years. So when that journey with Patricio started in 2007, and it ended with my last day of teaching in I think it was late June 2016. So I spent over 8 years, really, almost 9 years actually, almost 9 years teaching or working on this thing of math. And it all started with one Craigslist ad. That one Craigslist ad helped me get to know myself better. It helped me see something that I couldn't see in myself, so that I could then see a possibility. And I continued on that path. And it took about 4 years before, or 5 if you count from the moment I worked with Patricio. It took 5 years to get into a math classroom, to get into the actual classroom and teach in the classroom. These things take time. Reinvention takes time. It takes as long as it's going to take. There is no one way to get it done in a fixed amount of time, guaranteed all the time. That's impossible, because there are no two reinventions that will ever be the same. Everyone is different, and every circumstance and moment in time is different. And so that's why there's no way to actually figure out how to do a reinvention in a set amount of time. So it took me as long as it took me to get into the classroom. And honestly, I was having a blast while I was tutoring. So it's not like I was suffering along the way. I was still having fun, tapping into fulfillment and finding my best self along the way, getting to know myself better. So all of this started by keeping it simple. I kept it simple. I just put up a Craigslist ad just to see what might happen. And this wasn't the only experiment that I launched. I launched many where I tried little things here and there, small commitments. I'll try that job out. I could always quit. I'll get into that project. I can always back out after a little while if it's not working out. But the key is to, 1, keep it simple. 2, don't overcommit. Don't overcommit to anything. By putting up a Craigslist ad and only working with Patricio, because you're probably wondering, why didn't you book more clients? Didn't anybody else get back to you? I'm sure somebody else did, but I just wanted to work with Patricio. I didn't want to overextend myself. Remember, I was still working my day job and I was still parking cars. So there was only so much time left and I didn't want to go crazy here. I just wanted to test an idea out. And I only needed 1 client in order to test that out. So mission accomplished. I wanted to keep the commitment small. And one of the things that you're going to discover when you get into a project is that if you like it, you can always just keep going. And if it's not working, you can pull back. And that's the key about keeping the commitment small. You don't want to overcommit so that if it doesn't work out, again, you can back out. And then try something else. Or take a pause for a little while and then come back to that same thing again if you think there might be something there. It's up to you at the end of the day. But the point being is if you like it, you keep going. If you don't, you don't. And that's the idea with keeping it to the level of a project, to not overcommitting and turning it into a job, a full-time thing, or saying, I'm going to quit and then I'm going to go and figure out my career as a math teacher, only to find out, okay, I don't like this, or I don't want to do this. I'm not as into this as I thought it was. Oh my gosh, classroom management, what's that all about? You know, there's so many things that we don't know about something until we get into it. And that's why it's important to test it out. Projects, experiments, side hustles are incredibly powerful. And then as you start to get to know yourself and you get to know those different reinvention possibilities, some will fall away. They won't work out for you. There were many that didn't work out for me. And some will stay on, or maybe just 1 or 2 stay on. And then you will get to a point where you will now have a decision to make. First, you'll know you're ready to make a move. I knew I was ready in the middle of 2008 to make a move. I had started to think about it in late 2007, but I needed another 6 months to feel ready to actually do it. Don't get me wrong, still super scary when you quit. It's super scary when you don't receive your first direct deposit and you've been used to receiving that for many, many years. It gets really scary. But that said, that's just part of the journey. The key here is that you feel ready to make this move. You feel ready to tackle this new challenge and move forward. And ideally, with everything in place that you need in order to feel secure, in order to feel that you can bring your best self to all of the next or future opportunities that you're going to begin creating for yourself. So mindsets for reinvention, keep it simple. It's really important that you keep the project simple. There's something that I love that comes from the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. He talks about this idea about build, measure, learn. It's a framework. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. By build, he means build a version, any version, a very simple version of something. Engage in it, launch it, measure it, and figure out what worked, what didn't. And then learn. What did you learn? What do you take out of that? And then repeat. Build again. When you're building again, you decide, am I on the right path or do I need to make small adjustments? Whichever one it is, bottom line is you build again. And every now and then you might realize this is really just not working at all, and you pivot away and you start a new build, measure, learn cycle somewhere else with another thing. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. I guide my interests or my pursuits by build, measure, learn. I always think, how quickly and small can I build something so that I can measure it, I can learn something from it, and then I can make a decision. And keep repeating. And if it works, by the way, you keep going through that cycle. You go through that cycle as often as possible just to make that thing better. Obviously, when it started with Patricio, it wasn't so great. When I put my next Craigslist ad up, when I decided I wanted to get back to tutoring privately again outside of the Learning Center, you better believe I was very specific about how, because I learned not to leave the copy so broadly defined that anyone might reach out and ask for help. I wanted to make sure that it was very clear what levels I covered. I even went down to the classes that I would help people out with. So if your class is not on the list, don't even bother reaching out. So you want to have this mindset of build, measure, learn. And the reason why this keep it simple and this build, measure, learn framework and mindset is so important is that it makes it so that reinvention is not that big of a deal at the beginning. See, one of the things that I've run into working with my clients, researching people and interviewing people for my book, The Journey to Reinvention, How to Build a Life Aligned with Your Values, Passions, and Purpose. One of the things that I learned from that work was that people are often thinking about, it's got to be big. I got to quit. I got to go find a full-time job in that new interest. And I'm like, no. You don't want to find a full-time job in that interest. You want to keep it simple. You want to start small because you really need to get to know it, the opportunity, but also you need to get to know yourself better in that opportunity. Who are you in that opportunity? What comes out of you? What self comes out in that opportunity? I learned working as a math teacher at the Learning Center and tutoring students privately that my best self came out in those moments. That's when my best self showed up. And I thought I was doing pretty darn good in my day job. But it turns out that no, that wasn't the best version of myself. That was a good version, maybe even a above average version. But it wasn't the best version of myself. When I worked with math students, that was the best version of myself. And so this mindset of keeping things simple and keeping things small allows you to enjoy the experiments, enjoy getting to know yourself, enjoy getting to know a new possibility, a new field, a new interest, a new hobby, a new activity, and a few other benefits come along with it. You develop some new skills along the way. You shake the rust off of some of your old skills. You meet new people. You gain new perspectives. All of a sudden, you start to really live this very rich life through this one little experience that might only take 5 to 10 hours a week, maybe just a little bit more if you have the time to dedicate, but it doesn't take much in order to tap into all of these benefits that help you do that. And it all starts with keeping it really small. So the number one mindset that I want to share with all of you in this session, in this video, because if you've clicked to access this video, maybe you're thinking about a reinvention. Maybe you're thinking that what you're doing is not right for you right now. And that's cool, whatever the situation might be. Maybe you're going through some of the things that I went through. Maybe you've been laid off. Maybe you've been fired. Maybe you've been bullied. Maybe you're just not feeling the work anymore. You're not feeling the role, the industry, whatever it might be. If it's just not connecting with you, whatever brings you to the table here, what I want to do is empower you with a mindset that allows you to take action now, not to have to wait and depend on someone else to answer your application, to review your resume, to call you for an interview, to select you for round 2, round 3, round 4, and the final round interviews, and to make you an offer. No, I don't want you to wait for all of that, because those are things that depend on other people. They depend partly on you, but a lot depends on other people. A lot depends on what else is going on. A lot depends on variables that you cannot see, control, or have any idea what's going on behind the scenes. But when it comes to running a project, that's all you. That's something that you have full control and full power over. And keeping it small allows you to do that while you're still in the situation that you're in. And like I said earlier, when you're doing this thing, when you're teaching math, if that's your thing, and you're working with students and you're feeling your best, every night when I got home around 9 o'clock, I felt like I was alive. Like I had just come alive and I was ready to start the day. And go figure, the day was ending. I needed to get to bed. It was not easy to get to bed after that kind of work. And so I would need like some time to come off that high so that I can finally go to bed. But I just thought, wow, that's an amazing feeling. I want to feel like that all the time. And right now, I feel it every evening or most evenings, and I'm going to bring that to work the next day. And I just brought a better self, a better version of myself to work, to the challenges of my day job, or to the parts of it that weren't as fulfilling as they used to be. And I was able to go through that until I was ready to run towards something that was clearly defined, that I knew I wanted. And it wasn't something, a guess I was taking. It wasn't something on a whim. It wasn't running away from something. It was intentionally moving in a direction that interested me, mattered to me, and I knew would feel purposeful and would activate all of my passions. And so that's what I wanted. And so I knew that, but it takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, I started working with Patricio sometime in mid 2007, and it wasn't until mid 2008 that I actually made the move. And I worked with Patricio, and I stopped tutoring, and I didn't get to the Learning Center until about like 6 months after that. So that means that it took time even to get to the Learning Center. These things take time. They don't always happen in a linear fashion, one thing right after the other. Sometimes other things happen before you get back onto a path that might be right for you. But everything starts with a project. It starts with an opportunity to get to know yourself better, to get to know what matters to you, what your values are, what your passions are, what might your purpose be. These are not questions that are easy to answer. I know I've struggled, many times in my life to be able to answer when people say, what are 3 things you're passionate about? Oh gosh, I don't know. Like what do you put to that? That seems like such an important question. And then there are times that people say, what is your purpose, Roger? Oh, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I still get flustered even like answering that question today. And I am significantly more aware of what it is that matters to me and what my purpose is. But it's still a tough question. And imagine trying to answer that question without yet knowing yourself well enough. And you get to know yourself well by engaging, by going through projects, activating networks, by engaging in side hustles, whatever it might be. These are all ways that we get to know each other. And by the way, your day job is just one project in your life right now. It may take 40 to 50 hours of your week or 60 or whatever it takes, but it still only counts for one project. That means that you're only getting to know yourself so much in that one job. And just because it's more hours doesn't mean you get to know yourself better, because the job is still the same. There's a certain set of responsibilities, types of projects, skills that you put into practice. And that means that you just do that really, really, really well. And you get to know that part of yourself really, really well. But there's an entire pie of you to get to know. And your day job, even though it's a lot of hours, only helps you get to know yourself a little bit. I played on a soccer team around that time. In St. Louis, a competitive soccer team in a competitive league with an amazing group of people who were mostly from France. Such a cool experience, a way to get to know myself a little bit differently. I worked out a lot. I loved going to the gym. I really gotten into that when I was living in St. Louis. It was another way I got to know myself. I tutored math. I parked cars. I did so many things to get to know myself better. And I got to travel for work. And then when I traveled, I always stayed extra time to get to know that place a little bit better. These were all different ways that I got to know myself better. So my day job wasn't the only way that I practiced getting to know myself better. All these different projects and activities also helped me. And so this is why projects are so important. And that is why it's so important that we keep a project simple, because you don't want there to be a high barrier to entry into that project. You want to make sure that you can get into that project as quickly and easily as possible and get out as quickly and easily as possible if necessary. So when you think about your next reinvention or the one you're considering right now, I want you to stop that thinking for a moment. I want you to come back to now, and I want you to think, what's one thing you could engage in the next few weeks, or just for a few weeks? What's a project you can get involved in? What's a group you might be able to work with and help out with something, whatever it might be? What's a test you could run? What's a side hustle you can engage in that is as simple as putting up an ad on Craigslist or an ad on some other platform where people can find you, where it doesn't take a lot. You don't need Facebook ad campaigns or anything like that. I'm talking you can literally just take a few actions and get it started. What is that thing you could do? Keep it simple. And if you need help doing that, that's what I'm here for. I help people figure out those ideas, test them out so that they can find that project that they really want to go deeper on, so that maybe along the way they decide, you know what, this is what I want to do. And now I'm ready to run towards this. Now I'm ready to do this. This is ready for me to run towards because now I can live off of this, or I know that there's opportunities in this. And now I know that I'm not running away from something, but I'm running towards something that really matters to me. So the mindset starts with keeping it simple. Don't overthink it. Find something that you can do starting in the next few days. If you can't start in the next few days, it's probably not a small enough commitment. So keep it simple. Make sure that it's something you can activate quickly. And like I said, if you need help, you can follow some of my content. Pick up a copy of my book, The Journey to Reinvention. The stories I shared today are there, but there's other stories in here that I think will help you start to see yourself in some of those stories, where you can say, okay, I get it now. I get it. There's different ways to look at this, and same advice, just different ways to apply it, different ways to consume it. And so this might give you some ideas. And if it's something that you think I could help you with personally as a coach, then all you have to do is go on my website, rogerosorio.com/coaching, or just go to rogerosorio.com and click on coaching. And right there, you can then book a 30-minute discovery call with me. And I'm happy to get on a call with you. On that call, by the way, we're going to work through your reinvention possibilities. We're going to get clear on what it might be at this point and where it stands. And then at that point, I'll tell you a little bit about how I can help you as a coach. If that's something that you think you need help with, great. If not, at the very least, you'll walk away with clarity as to what it is that you can begin working on so that you can start moving in the direction of your new reinvention possibilities. Thank you so much for taking this time to watch this video, invest in yourself, and to take this massive action. You know, it took less than an hour, I think. And in this less than an hour, you've got the number one mindset that you need in order to launch reinvention possibilities. And if you're not in that place yet, that's cool, because that means you're in a perfect spot to start planting as many reinvention seeds as possible. These are the seeds of possibilities, but they got to be planted today. So place those ads on Craigslist, engage in those projects, commit in a very small micro way to anything that looks even remotely interesting, even if it doesn't show up anyway, because you never know, and you're going to at least learn something about yourself. All right, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from you, and whatever happens, I wish you all the best on this journey. Make your life great.